Today, I want to talk about foundations. Now, here I'm thinking about what kind of foundation we build our lives and even our societies upon. You know, the importance of having proper foundation was brought home to me late last year in the midst of the renovation that we've been going through in Junction City. Now, the church there was rather solidly built in the 1940s and has a good solid foundation around the outside. But as the workers got into the inner workings and crawled underneath, they discovered one whole section of a central supporting wall that didn't have the appropriate footings underneath. Well, that had led over the years to a slight sagging and sloping of the floor. And now this section of the floor was now going to be one of those entrances to the church, so it became necessary to properly prop up the floor. Well, that reminded me of a house that I rented in Salem after graduating from college. The house had no foundation under the central wall, very similar sort of situation. And the floor actually broke away from the wall and sloped downwards in the center. There was about a 4-inch gap between the wall and the floor. You didn't want to drop anything on the floor for fear of it rolling or sliding into the crawl space underneath. And believe me, there was no way that I wanted to crawl in that crawl space. So foundations, yeah, they're very important. Well, you know, many is the story of stately older homes being condemned because of questionable foundations that cracked or broke, leading to dangerous conditions. Well, today being Mother's Day, my thoughts have naturally gravitated towards the sort of foundation that my parents both built in our family as a way to live our lives, as I alluded to earlier. Probably some of the most important cornerstones of our family life were truth and trust, along with love and faith. As I've been recently talking with my mom and my brothers, we all share deep concerns with the erosion of trust and truthfulness in our national conversation. We perceive that we're in the midst of a truly national crisis of truth, leading to an eroding of trust, which even leads to an eroding of civic solidarity. You know, there's a very real danger we have today of our social foundation actually crumbling. You know, 5 years ago, very few people talked about fake news or alt news. News agencies, all for the most part, attempted to seek out the truth of situations, what actually happened, reporting on the facts of what was said, what happened, and uncover sometimes what was often hidden. People would, certainly as people are wont to do, would interpret these facts differently. But if something was exposed using accepted rules of evidence, then that was it. You can make your interpretations, but the facts were there. That was the situation. You had to deal with it in some way. But the calculated moving of conspiracy theories and theorists into the center of national dialogue has actually resulted in the crumbling of important foundations of the body politic and our society. You know, the fact that there is documented evidence is found in the Mueller report of Russian internet trolling, hacking of internet accounts, distribution of false and manufactured information and propaganda, all with the intent of throwing the American political process into disarray and causing turmoil in our society, well as influencing our election, is deeply disturbing. Even more disturbing is the fact that they seem to have achieved their disruptive intentions. So what has happened to our social foundations? So let's return to what Peter said about the stone which the builders rejected, becoming the cornerstone of our building. Now, of course, here he is referring deliberately to Jesus, rejected by the political powers and religious establishment of his time. So what sort of cornerstone is Jesus? Well, in our reading from the Gospel of John this morning, Jesus says something very illuminating. Now, when he was asked by Thomas to clarify what he meant by saying, "Where I am, there you may be also, and you know the way to the place where I'm going," Thomas said, "What?" We don't know. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Now, there's something very interesting about claiming to be the way that I just learned this last week. Very interesting. 2,000 years ago, Jesus and his small band of followers were living in the midst, of course, of the Roman Empire, one of the most powerful empires of the time. Now, this empire was held together by a series of very, very well-constructed roads. In fact, many of the roads are still used today. These roads were patrolled by the military, and they're used by traders crossing all over the empire. And all roads led to Rome. That wasn't just a saying. It was an actual fact. Well, that was also a political statement. It was a way of saying Rome is the center of power and the center of the world, and the emperor is the center of that center. So when Jesus says he is the way, he is setting himself in direct contrast to Roman imperial ideology, in which all roads lead to Rome, and in which those roads were actually symbols of imperial power. So Jesus was saying that he is the way to something different, not to the power of the military and political power, but to the power of love. Think about that. That was the center that he was saying that he was the road to. Jesus was saying that his way is the road to the source and the heart of love, which is God. Remember, John writes in 1 John that God is love. Not just that God loves, but that God is love. And so Jesus is saying that he was that way to that source of love. So, in order to find the pathway to God, to the source and center of love, you have to step off the old pathway and disentangle from the systems of that old pathway of power and domination. Get off the old roadway to follow this new roadway, this new path. Disentangling then. So the first step of disentangling from systems of power and domination is to tell the truth. That's why Jesus says he is the truth, because his way is founded upon truth, to establish truth as the foundation upon which you're building your life and your society. See, all three of those, the truth, the way, the life, are this foundation. Jesus says he is that truth, way, and life. So the Jesus path for the 21st century realizes that following Jesus on his path, traveling on his way, in his way, right? It's not only a way upon which you travel, but it's a way in which you travel, a manner in which you travel. It means living, then, a life based in truth. And it means disentangling ourselves from the forces and systems that distort and debase truth, wherever and whenever they are found. You know, I sense among many young people today a deep dissatisfaction and mistrust of what is being offered them as a foundation for life. Not just for their own personal lives, but also a civic life, a society. A lot of this has come in conversation with my own offspring and their friends at colleges and the friends that they associate with. You see, there's a growing awareness that the ever-increasing disparities between the very wealthy and the poor, well, and between the very wealthy and the rest of us, are not only unsustainable, but that they are at the core unjust, even wicked, and are antithetical to what a democratic and egalitarian society is built upon. And they have a strong awareness of what life at the fringes and the margins of power in society looks like. And they hunger for ways to bring the people on the margins into the center of the circle. They long for a different foundation for society and for how they can live in that society as persons with integrity and truthfulness. You know, I want to tell them. I want to tell them all, you know, I'm with you in this. And I know where to look. I look to Jesus. I find tremendous hope looking to the communities of people who have seized upon the way, the truth, and the life that is Jesus. I think that one thing that can emerge out of this COVID-19 experience is a return to what we are meant to be, ecclesias of Christ, or small gatherings, gatherings of people who do the Jesus thing, live the Jesus life in the Jesus way. I think this can be a time where we return to that our origins, that is at the core of who we are as followers of Jesus. You know, there are gatherings of people all across the country who in this time have discovered that the most important thing about following Jesus is serving people. Helping people at the margins of society, caring for those who have fled from certain death in their homelands, standing in solidarity with people who have been ignored or rejected by church communities, society in the past. Sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? You know, to me, this is truth in action in a way that lifts up life. Truth, way, life. So let's seize the moment along with Jesus. That's where Jesus is acting today and is rising up in people's consciousness. You know, as the cracks in our national foundation have become exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic, let's rebuild our lives upon a foundation of truth. Let's model what truth is by modeling our lives upon the one we believe to be the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus Christ. Let us be living witnesses, living stones in a temple of grace, compassion, love, and service. God is ready to do new things in our churches, in our communities, and in our world. Let's sign up, show up, and look up. May our lives proclaim the goodness and mercy that is our God and may we show the world just what truth looks like. Amen.